Coming up on Let's Make It, we make a countdown timer because a viewer asked us to. Right after this. Ting, the new way everyone is getting their cell service. No overage penalties, great rates, keep what you do not use, no contracts, and someone will actually pick up the phone when you need support. Use our link and get $25 off your first month's service or your new phone. Just go to tech-zen.tv/ting. Hello, it's time for another Let's Make It. And this week, we actually skipped a week. And if you were watching live last week, I'm sorry. I was actually out sick. I probably could have done a show, but I would have been coughing a couple times a minute. And I just didn't think it'd be very productive. And nobody else really enjoyed it either. And I wasn't really feeling good. Actually, you can kind of hear my voice is still kind of scratchy. I'm still getting better. But I feel a lot better. Just my voice and my throat and drainage and stuff like that is still going on. But we didn't do a show last week. Also, Bob is in the middle of moving. So I'm assuming he's still moving, and Bob, good luck with that. Because I sent him an email today and didn't hear anything back, which tells me, knowing how Bob responds to emails, he is busy doing something, and I imagine he's still in the middle of his move. Because I know it's going to take a week or two to get everything moved. So let's wish Bob good luck during his move this week. So this week is episode number 42, and it's recorded on November 4th, 2013. And I actually had a little bit of a hard time figuring out what I was going to do this week. I had some things planned, but I haven't had much time the last 2 weeks because there's a lot of changes going on in here. In fact, tonight I was scrambling to get everything back up because I'm moving some of my software switching from a Mac to a PC, so I have a better expansion. And in that process today, it didn't work right. So I ended up punting and going back to the old system, and I'm having licensing issues. In fact, on the stream, for some reason, Wirecast is no longer licensed on that machine. So whatever the reason's going on with that. But we are here tonight, and we do have something to talk about. But this week's show I actually did today because I got an email from somebody asking about a countdown timer. So we're going to talk about all the countdown timer, the features that he wanted, and we're going to walk through the code, and hopefully that helps him out. But I do want to apologize. I got a lot of people in front of me here that are starred or people that I haven't followed up with. I know Andy, Fink had some questions for Bob and I know I haven't had a chance to respond to him. I don't know if Bob's had a chance because being in the middle of his move. Sorry, we will get to that. These people are all your star. You're going to get a response back. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Also, Kent was a different question, not necessarily related to this show. We have a Zero LCD from Gennaro, and then we have Colin has about the Zigbee project. So we have all these things in my queue here that I will respond back. It just sometimes takes me a little bit. In these last few weeks, basically tearing apart the studio, moving everything around, and trying to put it back together have been taxing, and not to mention getting sick on top of all that. So very sorry for all these delays. As winter starts setting in and we get everything kind of settled in the studio, I think, weather being not so warm, we'll be inside a lot more and be able to get a little more focused. Okay, so just a reminder, we do have a chat room if you want to come and chat. It is at techzen.tv/live. You can watch and chat live in there all the time. And if you go to youtube.com/techzentv, you can see all of our old shows. They're out there on YouTube, in addition to being actually on our website if you go to techzen.tv. So you can subscribe on YouTube, or if you want to get it automatically downloaded, you can subscribe anywhere, Dogcatcher or iTunes, wherever you get your podcast from. We should be there. And if you don't find us in your favorite location, please let us know. We'll make sure we get ourselves listed out there. If you are on Twitter, you can follow us at TechZenTV. In fact, if you follow us on TechZenTV, last week we tweeted that we wouldn't be doing a show because I was sick, and you can get updates so you don't show up in the live area and don't have anything there. So and if you want to chat about this show in Twitter, use the hashtag let's make it, # let's make it, and that we do follow that and try to respond back to that. Now somebody else is also using the # let's make it, so we are weeding through that stuff, and at some point we may decide to change that because of the other people that are using that already, but well, we didn't realize that until we started using it. And if you're on Facebook, we'd love for you to give us a thumbs up. It's facebook.com/TechZenTV. All right, so this week's going to be a fairly short week because I really only have one thing to show you, and I'm going to go over and let me show you what I have here on the table. So what I have here is a keypad, which came from another episode, I believe episode 11. And so I reenacted some of that code, and then I have a I2C LCD. It's a 4x20 LCD, and then right here all I have is an LED. So I just use this tiny little breadboard, and you see an LED and a resistor, and this is just to represent what a relay would be. So when the LED is on, the relay would be closed, and this is part of an email that I got. And I got this email yesterday or today, and I decided this would be a great project for a show. So basically what it is this is supposed to be like an exposure timer or countdown timer. So what you're seeing is asking you to enter the time in minutes or seconds. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna enter in as 10 seconds just to give you an example. So you see there's 1, and then there's 0. And then to start the countdown, you hit the pound key right here. And to clear it, you hit this one. So I'm gonna clear it. You see we're back to 0. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put 10 seconds back in again. And then I'm gonna hit the pound. And you're going to see the relay turns on, and you see it counts down. It's going to count down to 0, and it's going to turn the relay off, and it's going to go back and want to know how much time I'm going to do again. Now 10 seconds is going to be there by default. If you want to clear that out, you can hit star. The other thing I did is I made this a rotating number. So let's say you already had 10 seconds in there, and you wanted to go a 1 minute next time. You can just enter another 0. Or if you want to zero the whole thing out and put in another number, or let's say you had 4 minutes in there, and now you want to do 2 minutes, you could just do 2, 0, and 0, and there's your 2 minutes. So you don't have to clear that out if you don't want it. It just rotates the numbers out. And at that point, you can hit pound, and it'll go ahead and run the timer again. Now, I also built in an exit. So in addition to clearing, if you hit the star key or the asterisk, it will clear it out in the middle of the timer. So from my understanding of the requirements of the project for today, this would be used to do some kind of exposure control. So he asked it to be put in minutes and then seconds, which is what this is doing, and that pound would go and star would clear. He didn't say that he wanted to be able to cancel out of it, but I figured if you want to get out of a timer, you have to be able to get out of it somehow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and walk through some of this code with you, assuming that the switching works, and it did. Okay. There it is. Okay, so let's get down past the comments here. Get back over to my monitor. And we're going to scroll down here a little bit. So what you notice at the very top is we have to include wire.h and liquid crystal because we're using the LCD display. And this is something we've used in quite a few projects. And I think we actually talked about the 2-wire interface, episode 5 or 6, pretty early on. We did LCDs pretty early on. And then in episode 11, we did this keypad. So here's keypad.h. If you go back and look at that project. So you see right here, I'm taking parts from different projects, which is not a bad thing. I mean, we do this a lot. You start putting up a library of functions, and you just go back to them and copy the functions. So as you do more and more development, you'll be able to get faster and faster at it because you can go back to old projects and pull pieces out of each project, which is kind of what I did here. So I set up control pin 13. So I mainly did that because I wasn't sure I was going to use an LED at first. I was going to just use the LED on the board, but then it wasn't big enough indicator, so I went ahead and added an LED. But I'm using pin 13. You can use any pin you want. Probably something better than 13 would be like 12, so you don't actually have the LED on the board activated. Then I define a character array that holds the current time value, and this is the numbers you're typing in. So I store those numbers as 4 numbers, assuming that the first 2 are minutes and the second 2 are seconds. Then I just stick a colon between them when I display it, and we'll show you that on down here. So as you type in, you're basically filling in from right to left into these 4 character array. And then here's our state engine. So we talked about state engines before. Again, we're going to go through something we talked about in the past, and that's a state table or state engine. And then the timer seconds is the number of seconds for countdown. So this will count from whatever it is down to 0. And when it turns to 0, everything turns off and goes back to normal. And the way I did timing in this is probably not the best way to do timing. However, I think for this particular example, it was the simplest one to demonstrate. What I'd like to do in the future is maybe have Bob come on. He's very good with timers in an Arduino, much better than I am, and maybe do a segment on how to use timers in the Arduino. I could have used a timer and probably would have been a little more accurate. However, I think this is probably accurate enough for what this is supposed to be doing. All right, we come down, we define the keypad. We have, in this particular keypad, we have 4 rows and 4 columns. In the email, he suggested he was going to use a 12 button, which is 3 columns by 4 rows. And I just don't have one of those. So I used one that has A, B, C, and D on it, but I'm not going to use those A, B, C, and Ds for this project. Okay, so I set up the pins for the rows, and the pins are for the rows is 11, 10, 9, and 8. And then for the columns is 7, 6, 5, and 4. And you may wonder why I did it backward like this. And if you look at the wiring on the the keypad, these are in order. So if 11 is the leftmost pin, 10 is the second pin, and on down the line. So it makes it nice and easy and clean to run the wires over. That's the only reason I did it this direction. These could be anything that you want it to be. All right, we define our keypad, and we give our keys at the top, our row and column pins, and the number of rows and columns, which is 4 by 4. Start up our LCD, and then we come in and we're going to init the LCD, turn on the backlight, and then we're going to display the code entry screen. Now, this really is the time entry screen. I should have renamed this. I took this from another program and I should have just renamed it. But what we're going to do is display the welcome, the let's make it, countdown time, and then enter time, and then MM:SS. This right here does. I go ahead and initialize our pin for the relay, and I set to output, and I turn it low because you don't want to come on by default. You want to make sure it's turned off. And then I basically erase the time values and set zeros in there so that something's in there. And then I show the enter time, which puts up the time on the bottom, and so it's going to display by default 00:00. And if we go back over here and you look at this, you can see right here is the 00:00. So I'm just basically blanking that screen out so that it is at a good place. And let me get rid of this. Okay. So we come on down here now. We enter the loop, and we define an integer as an L. We're going to use it a little later on here. And then we define our temp value, and you're going to see how I use this shortly. It's how I determine the number of seconds. It's part of the calculation to do that. I go ahead and get a key from the keypad, or if one exists. And if the key is not equal to 0, which means a key was pressed, and I'm in state number 1, which is the default startup state, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, is it, I'm going to put it into a switch statement, and I'm going to say, is it asterisk? Well, if it's asterisk, I've already said this resets everything. So I'm going to make sure relay status is off. So setting the relay status to false turns off the relay. And then I'm going to erase the current time value, put zeros in all the locations. I'm going to re-show the entered time. I'm going to make sure the current state is 1. I'm going to set my loop count, which we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the time of the timer to 0, and the seconds in the timer equal to 0. So that basically resets everything back to the startup state. And if you come down here and if it's a pound sign, then we know they want to go ahead and start doing the timer. They want to activate the timer. So for this, I'm going to take and here's where we use the temp values. Since I know the first 2 characters are the number of minutes, I set temp val equal 0 equal to the first 0 or whatever it is. It's in the number of minutes. In the second one, and then I put a null in the second one. And the reason I do that is I can then call this routine right here called atol, and you can give it this character array, and it'll convert it to an integer. So I take the first 2 digits value, the integer value, and take it times 60, and that's how many seconds. So if it's 5 minutes, you're going to get 300 seconds right here, and it's going to be equal to 300 seconds. So now I take and use the same temp value or variable and put in the seconds. So if it's 10 seconds, it'll be 1, 0, and then a null. So it's going to come back. I'm going to say timer seconds, which is equal to 600 from the previous one, plus 10 of atol makes 610 seconds, or 5 minutes and 10 seconds. So that's how I set the seconds for the timer. And then I say my current state equals 2. This state equals 2 means the timer is running. And we'll get into that when we go down a little bit farther down here. So we come on down, and if it's not an asterisk or not a pound sign, then we assume it's a number, because it has to be, and in my case it could be A through D, but I'm assuming using a 12-digit keypad that it's 0 through 9 or an asterisk or a pound key. So we come down here and we say that we want to go ahead and move everything. So as you saw when I was typing it in, it shifted it left. And there's probably, the way I would do this in C does not work in Arduino. And that's one of the things we talked about in the past. Not all C code works in Arduino. There is ways I think you can call routines, but if you want to create a library for it, but I didn't do that. I was in a little bit of a hurry to get this done for tonight. So all I did to shift the numbers over was I said that the 0 position is equal to whatever's in the 1's position. The 1's position was equal to whatever's in the 2's position. The 2's equal to whatever's in the 3, and the 3 is equal to the new one you just put in there. So what that does, it basically shifts things to the left. And then I go out here and I show enter time, which basically is putting whatever is in these values with a colon between them on the screen. So as you type, this is what this is going to do. Now this sits there and loops for every key press, unless you go into current state 2. So let's go down and look at the state 2 process. And what we do here is, if we're equal to 2, we drop into this. And if a key has been pressed, so this is how you get out of the timer. If a key has been pressed, I then check and see, is the key a star? And if it is, I immediately turn the relay off, because I assume you want to abort out of the countdown. I display the main screen again and zero out everything, just like I did with the star before. So it does exactly the same thing, with the exception of it does turn off the relay, and it puts the main screen back and makes sure you go back to state number 1, where you do keypad input again. So assuming that you're not hitting the star key and you are in state 2, here's where it gets a little bit more complicated in how I did the timing. So you see I have this LPCNT, and it's equal to 0, and if it's equal to 0 every time it goes past 10 passes by. And the reason that is, if you scroll down a little bit farther, I delayed for 100 milliseconds. So it takes 10 passes by to equal a second. So basically what I'm saying here is, if it's greater than 9, I know I've been by 10 times. So what I want to do is I want to put it back to 0, decrement the timer seconds by 1, show the countdown on the screen, or up to the countdown on the screen, and then I can come down here and I'm going to say, if timer seconds is equal to or less than 0, there's the possibility it could be less than 0 or somehow. So less than or equal to is the safe way to do this. I'm going to say, okay, I want to go back to state number 1, which is where you enter in the keys. I want to turn off the relay. I want to display the code entry screen, and I want to put back the enter time back to the main keypad entry. And if it's not that, I'm going to say I want to turn the relay on, because it's greater than 0 seconds left. So the first time through here, it's going to, after the first second, it's going to take and turn on the relay, and it's going to keep going through this loop. And that's only if the loop count is greater than 9. If you come down here, you see he's running, increasing the loop count. So for every 10 times around here, it basically does a check and decrements the timer. It should be, in theory, pretty close to a second. Now, it's not exactly, because it is doing some other things, but I think for the purposes of what we're trying to use this for, it's probably accurate enough. I didn't actually measure that, but I probably should have before I came on to see how accurate it was. But I imagine it's probably fairly accurate. It's not as accurate as using an actual timer interrupt, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. We need to do like a lot more on interrupts and timers in that. All right, so that's this whole thing. So when this gets done, it basically goes back to state number 1, and we come back up to the top up here, and we're now in state 1 right here, and we're going through the keypad input again. So I didn't actually let you see how this finished. Let me go back over here, and I'm just going to put in 15 seconds so it doesn't take real long. 15 seconds, and I'm going to go ahead and hit pound start, and we'll let it finish. So you can kind of see right now we're in number 2 now. We're in current state 2, and we're going through that loop. So you got to remember, for every second that it goes by, it's going around a loop 10 times. And then we're at 0, and we're back to the beginning again. So that's kind of how it falls out, just like that. Okay, so let's keep going through the code here a little bit. I do some other functions down the bottom here that I want to go through. So here's where it says the show entered time. So all I'm doing is I'm setting the cursor to the 14th position in the, actually it's the 15th position, because it starts at 0 on the 4th line. And I'm writing out the first 2 digits, the colon, and then the next 2 digits. So all I do when I call this is I'm putting in whatever we have in these character arrays, these positions on the screen in a known order. And then we come down here, and here's another routine called relay status. And you see me call that with either true or false. So if it is true, then the relay comes on, which turns control pin, which is pin 13, to high. And if it's false, then it turns the control pin to low. Very simple little routine for that. Okay, so here's the show countdown. And one of the things you're going to see in here is I have this character array again. This one's 6 in length. And let's see here. Hold on one second. Sorry, I needed to cough. Still getting over this. Okay, so what you see right here is this temporary variable, and I'm going to show you how to use that in a second. But basically what I do is I set the cursor to 0, 0. I'm putting asterisks the whole way across, setting the cursor to 0, 1, which is the second line. Remember, row is at the end on this. Column is the first one. It's backward how we normally think. And remember, it starts at 0, so this is really row number 2, first position. And I'm going to put down this letters. It's 20 characters, and it says counting down. And then I'm going to go to the third line, first position. I'm going to put in 2 asterisks and some spaces. And then you see here sprintf, which is a standard C function. It works fine in the Arduino. So I define this 6-character array up here, and I'm going to write out to this actually 2 characters. Well, it could be 2 characters. It may just be 1 character, depending on it, because I'm not saying force a 0 here. And then a colon. And then out here I'm saying force a 0. So if it's 1 second, for example, it's going to put out 0, 1, because I'm saying this is a 2-digit number. D is a decimal number, or a integer number. And then over here, I'm saying timer seconds divided by 60. So that tells me how many minutes, and that goes on this side. And then over here, I'm saying take timer seconds minus, and it seems kind of funny, timer seconds divided by 60 times 60. So what this does is it comes back with a whole number. Timer seconds divided by 60 gives you a whole number. You take it times 60 to get the number of seconds in the whole minute. You subtract that from the seconds, and that gives you the number of seconds left. It's just a different way of doing it. There's a bunch of ways you could do something like this, and that was the quickest way I could do it in my head. So anyways, after I put this out to this variable right here, I then print that variable out to the screen, and then I put out spaces and asterisks. Go to the next line and put out a whole line of asterisks again. So that's all that routine does, is just show you the countdown. Okay, and then we come down, and this is the code entry screen. And you see a call clear screen. This is actually the same routine that we used in the LCD and the keypad entry before. I just copied that other routine, and it's right down here. Basically, just puts out blanks. But then I'm printing out, let's make it countdown time, and then enter time in minutes and seconds. And that's all there is to it. And to get the time at the bottom, I'm using, it's a routine we just went through, which is right here where I show entered time. So I just call that after I display that screen, and that's all there is to it. It's not very long. It's ended up being 230 lines long, and like I said, a lot of this was copied from another program. I didn't have to do a lot of rewriting on stuff. So I did some new code in here too. But that whole 230 lines also includes this top section of comments up here. So I did comment this out. I didn't comment out down at the bottom, which I will do that before I stick it out there in show notes and describe some of this a little bit more, because I was kind of in a hurry. And actually, the way I was originally doing the code input was not working the way that I wanted it to. And that's when I went to the scroll it left to or right to left method, and that worked really well. It just seems like it works actually a little better than what the other one was going to work as well. So because the way the other one was doing it, I was going left to right and trying to figure it out every time, but still displaying it right to left, and just doing that didn't work as good as I thought I was going to. So I basically chucked what I was doing and started over, and did it this way. So one more time over here. Let's go back over here. And this is the entire project. So hopefully the people who wanted a countdown timer, this would work for what you need it for. Just get rid of this row right there. You don't need that row, that last row. You only need, this 12 characters right there, or 12 numbers right there, 12 digits. That's all you need. So anyways, that was the project for this week. And I'll have this code out there in the show notes and everything probably tomorrow, not probably Wednesday at the latest. I'll probably have this running through edit tonight, so it should be up ready to go tomorrow. I should probably get it all done tomorrow. So that is pretty much all I wanted to cover this week. Just a few other little housekeeping things. We love having you here live. We've gotten a lot of emails and getting more and more, and I love it. I do apologize for getting back to people so slow these last couple of weeks, but it's just been a little bit crazy, and hopefully that gets better. And actually, as you can hear, my voice is starting to go because it's the end of the day, and it gets worse and worse by the end of the day. But as I get better too, I have a little more time to spend on things. And being winter, I'm not a winter person. I really, really do not like winter. And I spend a lot more time inside working on things just to keep my mind occupied. I like light, so I have a little bit of the winter sickness or the sad, and I actually use a light, sit down here and work with a light in my face for that sun lamp just to help keep me happy, I guess, through the winter. I really don't like winter very much, because I don't like snow, I don't like cold, so it's just a time where I spend a lot more time down here in this room and can do, so I don't spend much time outside like I did in the summertime. So as that starts to convert over, I spend a lot more time working on stuff. The other thing is, you may notice I haven't shaved today, and there's actually a reason for that. This is MoVember, so I don't grow facial hair very well. So for the next 4 weeks, you're going to have to bear with a very ugly looking face because I don't grow facial hair very well. And I don't know if you've ever heard of MoVember, but it's a movement. I think it's men's breast cancer awareness. So a lot of my friends just don't shave in November, and I'm going to try it this year. Although I don't grow facial hair very well, so it's going to look very odd. I'm gonna have to keep it a little bit trimmed. But this is actually a week of not shaving. Today is officially a week, and it's not growing in very fast. But for the next 4 weeks, if you think I'm unshaven or something, that's why. There is a reason. I hate going unshaved. I don't like the feeling of it, but I'm doing it with some friends for this month. So you can make fun of my lack of facial hair all you want. And I haven't told this to Bob yet, too, so when he sees me, he'll be a little bit surprised. I don't know. Okay. That is it for Let's Make It this week's a very short one, and hopefully it answered the question that I got in the email. And if you have want to see us do something in particular, please let us know. I do have a whole bunch of things in my list of things to do. I got a whole box of sensors that I've opened up and looked at them and haven't had the time to start plugging them in, because I have a lot of things I want to do around different kinds of sensors as well coming up. But if you have something you'd like to see us do, we definitely would like to do that and put that kind of ahead of everything. We get a lot of emails. Like this week, I've gotten 6 or 7 in the last week that were pretty deep. This was just one of them. This one actually wasn't that bad. So if you have ideas though for future shows or things you want us to cover, I also started finally playing with the Udo, and I haven't gotten far enough along that I'm comfortable with it yet. I haven't gotten Unix on it. I've done a little bit. I want to install the Arduino code on the Udo itself versus programming the Arduino on the Udo separately. So that's something else I want to do. I want to get all that done and then come in and do a show about it. So I'm still working on that as well. It's a very neat box. It's a very neat little board. I'm pretty excited about it. In fact, I've really considered using that board maybe for my switcher as well in the larger ones, because it has some things built onto it that would be really nice to have in the switcher versus just what's in the Arduino. And I could combine the Arduino for the button control and stuff like that, and then use the Udo for the communication part, plus the touch. It has touchscreen built in. All kinds of neat things are built into it. So I'm really looking forward to spending a lot more time with that. And unfortunately, it's been sitting on my desk next to everything else as I tear apart my studio and start trying to get it all back together. It's pretty much back together, with a few exceptions of workflow items. And I thought I was going to come in tonight and be using the new stuff with a little bit of a hybrid, because I actually have to write some code in Windows for my switcher to be able to control it. And that switcher I don't have right now. I should have it back tomorrow. It's out getting the case made for it. So there's other things I can use. Like I use this thing to control the current Wirecast that I have on a Mac, but it doesn't work on the PC. So I've written the program on the PC but it doesn't work. It wasn't working right today, so I couldn't go use it. And I don't know why yet. So I punted back to the old stuff. But as we go through all this, this is going to start getting a little bit better instead of having all those different pieces laying around everywhere as well. So hopefully my time for that will loosen up a little bit in the next week or so too. And Bob will be back. Hopefully his move is done this week and he gets back on regular schedule and it starts getting on the call with us every week a little bit more. Again, any comments are great. Love to have them. If you are subscribed to us, like on iTunes or somewhere like that, if there's a rating system there, can you go get the thumbs up? Because those ratings help more than what people will realize. If you go out and give us a good rating, and particularly in iTunes, it really helps us get found a little bit quicker. And that's one of the things that just helps us get the show to grow a little bit. And one other thing, I've had this question in the last week. I want to make sure I cover this. If you buy things on our site from Amazon, we do get a little bit of a commission off that. It's like 3% or something like that. It's not a lot. It doesn't cost you anything more. It doesn't, there's no cost to you. But the little bit that we get back helps us to buy the parts and things that we use in here. This helps us to pay for the bandwidth and things like that. I mean, right now we pretty much do it almost all out of our pocket. So if we can help offset that a little bit, that's helpful. So if you have to go to Amazon to buy something, use our Amazon link from the website. That's helpful for us. Just help to offset some of the costs that we have. All right, everybody. We'll see you next Monday. For show notes for this show, contacts, and more, go to the techzen.tv website where you can get show notes for all of our shows. We love to hear from our viewers and listeners. We have an email, a Twitter, and a phone number where you can contact us for each show. For details, visit the techzen.tv website and get the show details. You can also make a video and upload it somewhere like YouTube or Vimeo and then just send us a link. You never know, you may see your video in a future show. You can get all of our shows delivered automatically to your favorite device by going to your favorite podcast website like iTunes and subscribing. Each of our shows also has a YouTube channel you can subscribe to get regular updates. Our shows are also available on most internet radio networks like Stitcher and TuneIn Radio. You can also watch and listen to our shows on Xbox, TiVo, and Roku.